Welcome back to DIY Thursday. This week we have part 2 of the Quilted 4th of July placemats. Now what you want to do first is get a piece of craft size batting and cut it into fourths, and then cut your backing fabric also into fourths. You want your backing fabric and your batting to be just a few inches larger than your placemat so that you have a little bit of room around it when you're doing your quilting. Then what you're going to do is you're going to layer all 3 pieces. And you're going to start with your backing fabric. And you're going to lay it so the right side is facing the table. And smooth that out good so that you don't want any wrinkles in it, because if there are wrinkles in your backing piece, there will be wrinkles in it when you quilt it as well. Then you want to take your spray adhesive. So you just kind of hold it away from the surface a little bit and spray it down. And then take your batting, lay that out on top, and really smooth that down so that there are no wrinkles. Give it another layer. And then lay your top down. I like to kind of, on the top layer, work from the center out so that I know that it's nice and smooth and we won't have any wrinkles for the quilting. The spray on this will hold for at least a few days. I've left it up to a week before, and you can get to it any time between now and then, and you've got your quilt sandwiched now. And when you quilt this, you have lots of options. You could quilt down the seam lines, you could do some free motion quilting and follow the waves of the print of the fabric. You could do some stars to mimic the star print. What I'm going to do is just very simple. I'm just going to use a walking foot to stitch in the ditch along the seam lines. And by stitching the ditch, that means we stitch on the low side of the fabric, so the side that the fabric has not been pressed towards. In this case, we pressed out toward the blue fabric, so I'm going to be stitching on this side of the seam line, getting right in the groove. To join the binding strips, take them right sides together and put them together at a perpendicular angle. If it helps, you can draw a line from the corner of one edge to the corner of the other. But basically you're going to sew on a 2.5 inch line to connect these two on the bias. Then you open it up to test to make sure that it is in line, and this is. And you're going to trim off the end to a 1/4 inch seam. And then you're going to take it over to the ironing board and press this open so that it lies flat. And to get the binding started, take the corner and just fold it down and press that in place. And then fold it in half, lengthwise. And go ahead and press along the length of the binding. Now take the end of the binding that we've turned under and place that at the bottom of the placemat and about the center of it. And we're not going to sew right on the edge. We're going to sew in a couple of inches from where the corner is. So we're going to leave the end loose because we'll need to sew a few things in. We'll need to sew the back end into it when we come back around. But just start sewing, keeping a 1/4 inch edge or seam allowance again. Now we're going to sew a mitered corner, so all the way to the edge of your placemat. Then you're going to lift up your presser foot but leave your needle down. Turn the placemat so that you've got the seam that's next going towards you. Now lift up the needle, pull it out from underneath just a little bit so that you can work with the fabric. We're going to turn the fabric so that it has a nice corner here. And then, so it's at a nice 45-degree angle, and then going back down. So you've got a little flap here, and that's going to be free, and that'll form the miter when we sew it back down. And now start right at the edge again and keep sewing. And you're going to do that to all 4 corners as you sew around. Now when you get to the end here, take a pin and put it in to hold that flap that we left open in place. And then pull the rest of the binding so that it's straight with the edge, and then fold it up so that it forms a 45-degree angle, and so that you have just a little bit of open space here, sew all the way down. And you're going to very carefully flip the edges over and start sewing. So again, just put the needle in the backing and the batting, but not through to the front, and then bring it out just on the edge of the binding, and then pull it tight. Now to finish the corners and to create a mitered corner, what you're first going to do is sew all the way to the end of the fabric and just sort of fold it out so that it looks like this. And then you're going to take your needle and put it through the underside of the fabric so that it comes out on the front side right in the corner where the binding meets. And you want it to come right up through that corner, and then pull it out and stitch down the fold that you've created with the fabric. Put your needle back through to the back side and stitch down that fold, and then continue sewing on the binding until you reach the end.